our Premier Agent business, which really is the workhorse of our revenue. That business has grown remarkably. We've become the go-to place for real estate agents to advertise. And that really was the result of us growing the other side of the marketplace, which was the audience. We have extraordinary traffic. We've become a household name, which is something we had always hoped but thought would take longer. And here we are on that Premier Agent foundation. We've built some other pretty exciting businesses. Rentals, which has been growing really nicely. We'll be breaking that out on a separate reporting basis coming up next quarter. And I know our investors and followers are excited to hear more about that business as it grows. But also lots of other things in the works. Experimental things like instant offers. Other businesses that have been emerging, like new construction, and then really exciting is our growth in New York City through our StreetEasy brand, and most recently the launch of Out East, which is our Hamptons brand.
Great. So when you think about some of the new initiatives and innovation side Zillow, is there a testing environment where you have a team that works in these specifically, or is this a broader effort? How do you view innovation inside Zillow?
We are a culture of innovation. It's we focus on the consumer as our North Star, and believe that if we keep that focus in all of the product development decisions that we make, that ultimately we'll build great businesses around that. So we move fast, we think big. I feel like there are many startups within Zillow Group working on different initiatives or different pieces of the business, and we don't get a lot of rest.
I would imagine, and you mentioned thinking big, so obviously a big transaction was the Trilio deal, and also some smaller ones like StreetEasy. So if you could walk us through maybe those two deals and how important they were to Zillow and how you evaluated that would be great.
Sure. So StreetEasy was a small acquisition, but just a perfect example of us, seeing an opportunity in a unique market in New York City and thinking about how do we find a place for that business within Zillow, and how do we find a team who has figured out something that we haven't quite figured out, which was unique vertical living listings for New York. StreetEasy was a small deal, but it took us a lot of time. We courted them for a long time.
Small deals, right?
And it has turned out just to be extraordinary for us in our definitely would do that deal again category. Okay. Trilio similarly. I mean, I feel like maybe we're the teenager who keeps asking out the girl over and over, and the person keeps saying no, because we pursued Trilio for a long time too, and finally got that deal done after a pretty quick negotiation of the deal when the rubber finally hit the road, but then a lengthy FTC review process. It's been extraordinary for us. It's enabled us to do so many things that we really couldn't have imagined, increasing the quality of our listings because of the benefit of the scale of that deal. We acquired a team of people who were very focused on building tools for agents. So the Premier Agent app really came out of that transaction, the talent that built that. So it's been remarkably successful for us.
Right, as we were preparing for this, we talked a bit about what it takes to integrate companies, and obviously there's an approach companies take for larger size deals and smaller size deals, and culture comes up a lot, and it's an easy word to throw around, but when you think about it from a tactical perspective and how you integrated the cultures for when you have two of the obviously companies going at it head to head and maybe not the best of friends over time, and then you bring them together, can you walk us through that a little bit in some detail?
Sure, so no matter what the size of the acquisition, the culture question is always the thing we focus on most. From the first moment that we start evaluating a potential acquisition, we're really focused on whether the team that has built the product that we're interested in would fit in well with our culture. And whether they have cultural hallmarks that they will bring to us that will improve our culture, even though it's terrific, but we can always do better. So with Trilio, when you're looking at a company of that size, it was really complicated to think about how do we take what they have built, and their culture was similar to ours, but different enough because different leaders and different people. How do we not ruin what they have, but also make sure we're all speaking the same language? And it comes down just really to communication and mutual respect. and trying to figure out, how do you preserve what's really valuable, but also, make sure that we're all singing from the same music.
Not easy.
No, not easy.
But obviously, it seems like it worked out very well in this case. And you mentioned, the size and scale that you achieved with that and where you are today. So just some few basic numbers. In 2012, Zillow had 36 monthly average users. Today, we're up to almost 200 million average users, which is almost 70% of the home buying audience in the country, which is pretty massive. Mm-hmm. And then you start thinking about who is the average home buyer being 35 years old, and just the opportunity that all this presents. So if you think about the next maybe 2, 3, 5 years and what's on the roadmap, how do you see the company? What do you want to, when you look back, what do you think Zillow can accomplish in this time frame?
We're focusing a lot of effort right now on deepening our relationships with both our agent advertisers and consumers by moving down into the transaction funnel, not as a participant in the transaction, but as a conduit between agents and consumers to make their relationship stronger earlier and more likely to result in a commission in the future for the agent and a home for the consumer. I mean, it sounds kind of obvious, but one thing we never forget is when a consumer comes to Zillow Group shopping, and you were saying you're doing this right now, what you're focused on is getting into that home. So, we're trying to cement the connection between the agent and consumer to make that happen more quickly.
And do you think when you look at the value Zillow is providing there, obviously I mentioned to Kathleen, I'm doing a sell and a buy at the moment, and my first place I always go is Zillow, and I talk to my agent at some points as well, but I'm always on Zillow.
Thank you for that. We appreciate it.
I mean, but it's a natural. It's the brand is just such that that's where you want to go. So when you think about how you will leverage that going forward, just that mind share you have, are there some key areas of monetization there you think that stand out?
Yeah, I mean, there are a bunch of different things, and I think when you look at our unique user number, obviously everyone who's coming to Zillow is not looking to buy a home right now. Yeah. So I think one thing that we are now able to offer is, a suite of services to consumers for their entire life cycle. Okay. And we get the renter who's fresh out of college, who's using the HotPads brand to find their first apartment in a large building. Then maybe they take a job in New York City and they're using StreetEasy. Eventually, they're getting married and having children and buying a home in the suburbs, and we're helping them with that. So trying to find something, for the entire continuum of the shopping life cycle. And then along the way, when you're a homeowner, you come to Zillow to see what your home is worth. It's probably your largest investment. You want to keep an eye on that. You come to check out your neighbors' houses and your boss's house and all of that. So we try to create all kinds of touch points along the way. And one thing that I'm really excited about is that we're starting to focus more on the seller side of the marketplace versus just the buyer side of the marketplace. So over time, you'll see us experimenting with new products to help the seller, the persona we call Susan, think about putting her home on the market, valuing the home, what's the best strategy for her to choose an agent, to perhaps do a direct sale in our instant offers marketplace, all kinds of things like that.
Interesting, yeah, because the buying part seems easier than the selling part, so that does seem like there's a lot of opportunity there.
There is a lot of opportunity, in part because on this, the market, in terms of as you're thinking about selling your home, you don't immediately think, oh, I'm going to go online and find an agent that way. Buying that's already more developed. But it's interesting because when I talk to young people, they get it already. They not only think about shopping online until they're really getting serious, but they expect everything to happen right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. And so you think about the agent. Are there misconceptions you think that are out there with the agent community today about what Zillow and the value you're providing to them? Or are there things that need to be focused and worked on to develop that relationship?
I think that has been a pretty dramatic evolution in our business that nobody loves change, particularly when it impacts their profession. So I think in the beginning it was and a process of, number one, persuading agents that we don't think they're going anywhere. They're an important part of the process, but also that we're here to help them grow their business. Now, by and large, real estate agents understand the value of advertising with Zillow Group, and they understand how to take the consumers who we provide to them and turn them into clients,
right.
Not just consumers. So, our relationship with the agent community, I think, is pretty terrific right now, and we know we both need each other.
Yeah, they do play a role, right?
Yep.
They are there to help you get you comfortable from
Yep.
time to time.
For sure.
Great. So thinking about maybe turning to some of the metrics of the stock and how Wall Street views the company today. No CFO ever feels that the stock is fully valued by any stretch, but are there things that you continue to emphasize with Wall Street that they may not fully understand, or do you think they're getting a pretty clear picture of the vision of Zillow?
I feel like we've had a really great opportunity to tell our story to investors, and I think they get it. We are and have always been a very long-term focused business, and I think investors by and large realize that. Like any company, we have times where we're happy or less happy about what we believe the health of our business to be is reflected in the stock price, but I don't think there's a single company that doesn't go through that. But we're in this for the long haul, and our investors, I think, see that and appreciate it.
Right. Do they when you think about your capital allocation and ability to do more acquisitions, are there ideas that the company thinks about? Is it more innovation and organic growth, or are you looking at other options there?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time looking at businesses of all shapes and sizes out there for acquisition. As I said earlier, culture is the first thing we consider when we're meeting folks who have a business that is interesting to us. And then we kind of have two dimensions. One is this a group of people who have figured out a problem that we haven't been able to solve? Or is this a group of people who've done something that would take us way longer to do, even though we probably could figure it out? And then how does that fit into the ecosystem that we have? So, we don't have a particular shopping list for companies, but we do spend a lot of time, getting to know folks out there in our industry and thinking about how we could work together, whether through partnership or acquisition.
Yeah, because even before Zillow, you spent a lot of time in e-commerce as well.
Yes.
And you've seen trends kind of come and go, et cetera. Obviously, you're disrupting one of the largest industries in the entire country. Are there things you think that Zillow has to do to stay at the forefront of this evolution that really stand out to you?
Oh, absolutely. As I mentioned before, the younger generations, they want everything right now, right? And we've seen this evolution, largely because of mobile, that has created on-demand everything. So we need to continue to innovate and provide services that match the consumer expectations, and those expectations have evolved pretty dramatically over just the past handful of years. So we cannot slow down.
And do you find that? I imagine the employee base is a mix of young and old. Do you find watching what the younger employees do, and do the ideas come up through the ranks that way to say, hey, here's what's actually happening now, and here's how we behave as a consumer?
Yeah, I mean, we are a remarkably open culture when it comes to innovation and ideas. We are walking the halls every day. I'm talking to all kinds of team members and hearing about what they think is interesting. But we do other little things like, we have an email alias where folks can submit any idea they want. Okay. Some of those ideas are better than others, as you can imagine, but they all get considered and responded to, and many find their way into the products. A lot of times folks are pointing out things that those of us who are on that email haven't figured out, so it's pretty great. And we also have periodic, depending on the office, quarterly or biannual hack weeks where employees can take a week and just build something. And I don't think I'm exaggerating to say hundreds of those projects have been incorporated into our products over the years, and a lot of that comes from the diversity in our employee population, the different perspectives, different ways of thinking about that, and we want to give people an outlet through which they can build on that.
So if you had to think about the Zillow culture, is that one thing that stands out It's just that willingness to be inclusive, bring ideas up through the ranks, and let people experiment? Or are there other aspects of culture that really stand out to you that has proven successful at Zillow?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's an open and inclusive culture that I think allows us to think big and to dream together. Put simply, I love coming to work every day. I love my team. You can think, oh, the finance team, that must be pretty boring, but we actually have the reputation of being one of the most fun teams in the company. I just love it.
I wouldn't say boring, but what would you say? How do you do that personally? So you run this division, and they have, you said they have a reputation for maybe a little bit more on the stage side. What do you do to spur that personally?
I try to get to know my team members on an individual basis and understand really personally what makes them tick. We do employee engagement surveys, and one of the questions we ask employees that has a high correlation to retention is there someone on your team who cares about you personally? And I want to make sure that every person on my team knows that I care about them personally. So I try to get to know them. I do some kind of silly things with them, but
Nice.
It's all part of the job.
Awesome. That's great. I was going to leave a few minutes for questions at the end, but one topic I had brought up on the phone that I'd like to just get your take on is dual class shares. I mentioned that because Nasdaq is a very vocal supporter of dual class, and I'd say in my time, which is 17 years at Nasdaq, I've never seen more of a focus from some of the passive funds, et cetera, on challenging dual class. But we personally have seen it work with companies and how it benefits shareholders. So maybe, I know with Zillow, and about 3 years ago, you moved to the dual class shares. Maybe you could talk to us a bit about that rationale and why you think it's important to the company's long-term success.
So it's worked out really, really well for us. And to clarify a little bit, we've had a dual class structure our entire life cycle.
Yeah.
What we added was a third class of non-voting shares. We still have voting shares out in the market as well. For us, it has allowed us to have the orientation that I described, which is orientation on the long term. Being a founder-led company, it gives us the freedom to think about maximizing shareholder value 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now versus next quarter. I understand the controversy. I understand why it makes people uncomfortable. I'm a true believer when you have the result of a dual class structure be a true orientation on long-term shareholder value. Right. I think for companies who are responsible, that's why they take advantage of that. And as I said, I think our results speak for themselves, and I hope to deliver even more value to our shareholders in the future. But it gives us this really terrific flexibility.
Yeah, and that's a bit of our support in that as well too. If we look at it, it's a buyer beware market. People know what they're buying,
Sure.
And as long as it's clearly articulated why we think it clearly makes sense, and it's benefited a lot of shareholders out there.
Yeah, it's just another attribute of the company.
Yeah.
That you can look at companies from many, many different dimensions. That's just one thing to take into consideration as an investor, and our investors at least seem to see it as a positive, and as do I.
Great. We have about 3 minutes left, so I thought I'd leave it out room here for 2 questions from the audience. If anyone wants to raise their hand and ask a question. Please.
I've been watching Rich Barton since when he launched Expedia, and when he launched Zillow, I was like, this guy knows what he's doing. He's a great founder. So I don't know, just what your thoughts on, you say founder-led company, I heard you use that phrase, so how is Rich still involved in the company, and what's it like working with him?
It's fantastic working with him. He's very involved in the company as our executive chairman. Zillow he is doing a lot of things, but Zillow is his primary area of focus. He's a visionary, and his mantra of power to the people that has carried him through, starting with Expedia and wanting to climb through the telephone to talk to the travel agent and get the real scoop, all the way through Zillow and all of the other companies he's been involved with. That's what guides us. The democratization of information. And Rich is a dreamer, but a practical dreamer. So I really appreciate his guidance, and I'm really grateful that I get to be a part of his vision.
That's great. I think we have time for one more.
When you think of your revenue composition as being more transactional or subscription, are there
Yeah, so, our belief, and we started Zillow during a pretty rough real estate economy, and we grew through that. Obviously, it's a little bit different now at our scale, but our belief is that in a challenging real estate market, as in most markets, there will be a flight to quality. And we provide a quality service to consumers. We deliver very highly qualified consumers to agents. On the agent side of the market, the agents who are really good and will be able to get transactions done are going to continue to see the value of our product. So we feel like we're really well positioned no matter what the real estate climate. Obviously, we hope the real estate market stays healthy. We see now some headwinds with inventory constraints, and we're able to grow through those because the high quality agents become even more valuable when it's really hard to find a house that you want to buy.
But are you contemplating strategically an additional revenue streams that are somewhat different than current revenue streams?
We're working on tons of different things, whether it's revenue from rentals, in a market where rentals become more important, mortgages, for consumers who are looking for a mortgage. So we're, notwithstanding that, real estate is what you think of with Zillow, it has a lot of facets, and we think we serve consumers and therefore advertisers on a lot of different dimensions. New construction is another example there.
Great. Well, our time is up.
Great.
I think the Zillow story is obviously a tremendous one, and it's remarkable what has been accomplished to date, but it does feel like there's the best is yet to come, and there's a lot more opportunity out there for Zillow. So let's give a big round of applause for Kathleen and all our comments.
Thank you very much.